Services Marketing, MKT 625, lecture number 39.
Assalamu alaikum Khawateen Hazrat. This is Wasim Ahsan, your instructor for the course Services Marketing, MKT 625 at the Virtual University of Pakistan. I welcome you to lecture number 39, in which the topic is balancing supply and demand. I did start talking about this topic toward the end of the last lecture and will continue with the same. There's a need to manage with both supply and demand due to the fluctuations that take place on the demand side. The patterns of demand are never consistent. They fluctuate on daily basis, on monthly basis, on seasonal basis, and on yearly basis. This is a very interesting side and a phenomenon of the services marketing, that we have to deal with fluctuating demand patterns even on daily basis. There are certain parts of the day when demand is low, and there are certain parts when demand is high. So we've got to manage the supply side and also the demand side. Actually, when we are stretching our supply, meaning the capacity about which I've been talking in the previous lecture, we are managing supply. And we have to manage supply when demand exceeds the supply side, meaning when it exceeds the capacity, and when it exceeds on a consistent basis, there is more reason to start managing supply, because we have to stretch it in order to absorb the excessive demand. However, if the case is otherwise, meaning when demand falls short of supply or capacity, we have to absorb that unused capacity in order to make sure that our resources do not go waste, especially in terms of human resources who we have hired for the company should not be sitting idle. They have to do something to be able to sell and deliver the service. When we are not in a position to utilize full capacity, we have to manage demand, and that's what we call managing the demand side. Talking about the supply side, because we still are in that process of learning, let me tell you that there are four factors which I talked about in the previous lecture. Number one was hiring part-timers in order to stretch our capacity. Number two was involving our regulars to work overtime so that we have an increased capacity. And number three was working with peak time operating procedures. And number four was cross-training of employees. I also did talk about certain advantages and disadvantages of these four factors, with special emphasis on marketing and operating concerns. I will be summarizing all that once I'm done with all the seven factors. So let us get back to the remaining three, which I did not have a chance to talk about in the previous lecture. Those three are increasing participation of customers toward the delivery of the service, and the sharing facilities with some other supplier, and outsourcing. And that completes the list of the seven factors that we have at our disposal as service providers to stretch capacity in order to absorb the excessive demand, which is a pleasant problem for the company, meaning for any company. Increasing participation of customers means that we do not really exceed the number or the strength of our employees beyond the one that we maintain during lean periods. Even if we increase the strength, we do that very marginally, because we are involving our customers as part of the whole delivery process. And this phenomenon can be exemplified by self-service cafeterias, lunches, and dinners at restaurants. You know that the customers help themselves, and it does not really call for unnecessarily increasing the strength of the employees. This is a phenomenon which really works well for service sellers, because they maintain the strength at a certain level. However, this is a concept which is liked by certain customers in certain industries and disliked by certain customers in certain other industries. It is a very highly workable concept in the food industry, meaning in catering and dining and so on and so forth. But when it comes to some other industries, it may not find ready acceptance or attraction. Just take the example of a very small service of checking the tire pressure of your motorbike or motor car. If you're not fully served, you may like to go to another location to have the service delivered, because you do not really like to check the pressure by yourself. It is not only the question of like or dislike, it also is the question of the customer's experience in that particular service. If the customer happens to be a female one, you can well imagine the difficulty she might face in checking the pressure. And therefore, this is kind of a service which may not work by involving the customer. However, the self-service concept at an ATM is highly acceptable, and it works very well. Actually, service sellers can have found out there are certain services which get choked up because of customers' inexperience or customers' dislike. So in other words, while dealing with this factor, the service sellers have got to be very sensitive to the nature of the service that they are selling and look into the level or the degree of acceptance or unacceptance on part of the customers, and then move ahead with the design of that particular service. However, it does remain an effective way of stretching capacity, because we are dealing with a situation in which demand exceeds the supply side, and therefore we would like to make every effort possible to have additional revenue fall our way. The next one is the sharing facilities with some other supplier. This also is a workable way of stretching the supply side. Sellers in many a situation make arrangements with other sellers to use their facilities. Let me give you an example. In order to internationalize its service, a courier service might get into some kind of arrangements with another courier service to start using their facility for that particular service. And that company which is offering its facilities for sharing to the wishing company may get something in return. What they get in return is a matter of mutual benefits sorted out between the two the parties, but the fact is that facilities can be shared, and they are shared by certain suppliers in certain industries. The third factor is that of outsourcing, which is a very interesting factor and is becoming quite very popular nowadays. And outsourcing works very well when it is a question of outsourcing to another supplier the peripherals. You have to be mindful of the fact that outsourcing to somebody else the core product could be harmful, because your subcontractor might steal the business from you and start dealing with your customers directly. However, when it comes to peripherals, it works quite very well, and that is precisely the reason it works quite very well in the area of catering. When you outsource to someone else as part of your catering, you are not really outsourcing complete core product, because the core product consists of a complete menu management, an extensive line of the different kinds of foods, and the way you deliver the service. The collective effect of all these factors could be your competitive strength, which may not be stolen or copied easily by somebody else. And that is the reason you've got to be quite very careful in outsourcing to someone else the part of the service. And which part you outsource is your decision. It works quite well in the area of data processing and also the human resources. We know that there are many companies that outsource data processing to other companies. I think the call centers is a classic example of the voice data processing and management nowadays. Huge retail stores and airlines are not really interested in processing their voice data, and that's the reason they outsource that to the call centers, which are located in areas remote to those the services, for the simple reason they want to free up more time for attention to their core product, meaning core business. Moreover, it is their specialization, whereas it is just one of the peripherals of the company which is outsourcing this business. Even HR functions are being outsourced nowadays, and there are companies that outsource their complete HR functions to the HR consultants, because they are the ones who specialize in functions like hirings and staffing and keeping complete the records for specializing in the HR information systems. And this gives us a very clear idea about the extent to which we can go for outsourcing the part of our business to other companies and the firms. With this, our understanding about the factors responsible for stretching capacity should be complete, because we know there are 7 different ways and means whereby we can expand our capacity to entertain the excess demand and make sure that any additional revenues that could come our way should be enjoyed and absorbed by the company. And it takes us to the next area, which is about managing demand. Well, there are 3 different strategies for managing demand. One is the shifting usage to a lean period, meaning shifting demand to a lean period. The other one is the decreasing usage at the peak period. The third one is stimulating demand or usage during lean period. As you can see, it is all about doing something with the usage. Either we shift the usage, or we decrease the usage, or we stimulate usage. Why do we have to do that? Let me talk about these 3 strategies one by one. We shift usage to a different period, which should be basically a lean period, because we cannot entertain demand at the peak time. And when we shift the usage to a lean period, it is an advantage to the company, because the company does not lose business, the company does not lose income, and more importantly, company does not compromise quality. When the company does not lose income and the quality of the service, the company is fulfilling the 2 fundamental requirements of services marketing. The question here is, can sellers shift usage to lean periods every time they wish? The answer is no, because it is not a question of choice on part of the sellers. They may be able to do so in certain situations, but in certain other situations, they may not be able to do so, for the simple reason that it basically is a question of customers' ability to have control over the causes of fluctuation. If the reasons for fluctuating demand are beyond the control of the customers, there's no way that sellers can shift the usage to a lean period. Let me give you the example of the transportation. Public transportation by way of public buses, fulfilling the commuting needs of the people, working people in the morning and also in the evening. People go to their offices in the morning and they come back home in the evening, thereby making it very clear they have no control over the reason that causes fluctuating demand. The reason is they're going to the office at a particular time and getting off at a particular time. There's nothing that they can do in between those hours, and therefore there is nothing that sellers can do in order to shift this kind of a usage. Because it cannot be shifted, nobody has control over this kind of a fluctuation. However, there are the services and situations for which and on which customers may have a certain level of control, but then that control has got to be initiated by the sellers with the help of certain incentives. Let us talk about an airline that tries to shift usage of excessive demand from the weekend rush to the weekdays. There could be certain customers who are willing to travel during the weekdays instead of the weekend. Those who may not are the ones having inflexible schedules, and therefore they have to be served during the weekend. But there will be many who might shift the usage to the weekdays only because they're getting a better price. And if they happen to be price-conscious customers who do not really have a pressing need to travel during the weekend, will shift the usage. Another example could be that of tax consultants who may educate their customers to make the optimal use of the consultant's time during the rush months of submitting tax returns. And therefore, it becomes the responsibility of the consultant to manage demand by giving his clients a schedule that optimizes his time. Another example could be that of the auto service garage, where mechanics can educate their customers about the most appropriate time to visit the garage the next time around, only because they have to bring about a balance between high rush hours and the lean periods. The second strategy at the disposal of the service sellers is that of decreasing usage. This strategy is employed only when the peak hour rush cannot be handled by a particular business. It is not a very fruitful situation because the company is not in a position to entertain the excessive demand. But then, if it cannot be entertained, customers have to be turned away and the usage decreased. However, I can tell you that once it is done, the company is back to the optimal level of providing service to its customers, and there's no compromise on quality. And the company, from that point of view, also is in a comfortable situation of charging the right kind of price, which gives the company good profitability. More on this a little later. The third strategy is that of stimulating demand during a lean period, meaning stimulating usage during lean period. And this can be exemplified by the behavior of the resort hotels, which we all know get into some kind of incentive programs during off-season, and thereby attracting some the customers and increasing their business. Restaurants do the same thing if the demand at the lunch time or the dinner time is not very high, and they find their business less than highly viable. They might like to get into the breakfast service, thereby stimulating demand during a period which is otherwise not utilized in terms of the resources to which the restaurant is committed. These the strategies are pretty much straightforward ones, and to revise the whole thing again, there are basically three different angles to it, and those angles relate the usage. The one is to shift the usage if the company really can do that, and utilize a capacity of the company at a time or during a time when the company is passing through a lean period. The second one is to decrease the usage if there is nothing the company can do to absorb the excessive demand. And the third one is to stimulate the usage during lean period. After having understood all the strategies of the supply side and also the demand side, we have to take a look at certain tools which sellers have to themselves in order to manage demand. There are basically three different kinds of tools which are used by sellers. The one is reservations, the other one is differential pricing, a very interesting tool, and the third one is communication. The reservations are used as a standard practice by professionals in areas like medical, legal, and different kinds of consultancies, just in order to ensure a consistent inflow of their customers and thereby managing demand. A similar kind of practice is undertaken by hotels and restaurants who get into reservations only because they want to ensure availability for their customers of the services upon their arrival. And this is how they manage their demand. Now, there is a very interesting side to the whole concept of making reservations, because the sellers in this kind of a situation really are in a position to shift usage, which otherwise they cannot. So here they seem to have control over shifting usage or demand to those time frames which are suitable from their point of view, meaning from the standpoint of the sellers. Customers almost always compromise with the schedules as given by the sellers by way of reservations. And in case customers have any questions about the timing, they always talk with the sellers, and flexibility is shown by sellers to accommodate certain customers. But the fact remains, this is one of those tools which really provides the sellers with the ability to shift the usage to a time frame which suits the seller. The second one is differential pricing, which I said is a very interesting tool because this deals with lowering the price during lean periods and escalating the price during high periods. So when you see these incentive programs during off seasons in practice, it is a reflection of differential pricing. By the same token, when you experience high pricing during high demand periods, it again is a reflection of differential pricing. But differential pricing is very interesting from the standpoint of the high periods. Although it really helps the companies to stimulate demand during lean periods, but it helps companies more during high periods because it really curtails demand at the peak level. It enables a company to shift the usage to a lean period if the company can do so. And we know the situations in which the companies can and the situations in which the companies cannot. But the fact is that by staying at that peak level, differential pricing, which is a high differential pricing, really enables the company to make more money, to make more profits. And if the companies are in a situation to maintain the quality level of the service delivery, they are healthy companies. Demand may decrease if customers are not really willing to pay a high price, but then in that case, there is nothing the company can do to absorb that demand. And it does not lose business. It does not lose any income because it is operating at the highest point of the capacity. And therefore, differential pricing is useful in this kind of a situation. However, demand may decrease if customers are not really willing to pay a high price, but then in that situation, the company does not lose any business because it is already operating at the highest possible point of the capacity it has to itself. So differential pricing is a good strategy and is very interesting regardless of a demand shift. Meaning, even if a shift does not take place, the company does not lose anything. And if a shift takes place, it is all the more better. And it also is a good strategy if demand consistently exceeds the supply, because that is kind of a situation which enables a company to keep charging a high price. And the best when a shift takes place, like I said earlier, because when a shift takes place, the company is in a position to make use of the highest possible level of capacity it has to itself, and also it can shift certain portion of the excessive demand to the lean period, thereby earning more money. The pricing during the lean period may not be as high because you have to stimulate the lean period, but then the addition to the revenues is meaningful in that kind of a situation. The third the tool sellers can have to themselves is that of communication. You will fully agree with me that the two strategies which relate shifting usage and stimulating usage really are the ones which have to be publicized, because until the time we let people know that we are wanting to shift the usage or we are stimulating the usage, people will not know what is happening at the end of the companies. However, the third strategy, which is about decreasing the usage, is not something that we deal with when it comes to communication. We rather keep quiet as companies. But for the remaining two strategies, like I said, there have to be certain ways and means of communication. One of the ways and means is communication by employees. We let employees tell all of our customers who walk into the facility about shifting the usage. I already have given you examples of the tax consultant and the auto repair shop, where people working for the companies can educate their customers about the most appropriate hours in terms of making the seller's schedule more efficient and more manageable, and also kind of comfortable from the customer's standpoint. So therefore, this is a type of communication which carries a lot of conviction with itself, because it is the providers of the service, meaning it is the on-stage component that is communicating with the customers. And this takes us back to one of the most important qualities which on-stage component must have, and that is the quality of communication. They have to be able to talk so convincingly with customers that they really take you seriously in terms of the content of the communication which is taking place. They know it is to their advantage, more to their advantage and less to the advantage of the company, that the company is talking about shifting their schedule when they come to the facility the next time. Another tool of communication that we have in our bag is advertising, pretty much known to all of us. We have to advertise extended and long hours in particular, so that customers are educated about the extension of the operating hours, and therefore the accessibility side of the distribution. There is a strong possibility that the working people might alter their demand pattern by walking into the facilities of different services which they're wanting to buy at a time which is after the working hours. However, the disadvantage is if everybody makes a decision to walk into the facility at the same time or during the off hours of their businesses, then there's going to be again a rush situation in which the sellers again have the challenge of managing demand. And if that is the case, they can resort to all those strategies which I already have talked about, and in particular the strategy of shifting the usage. They started with this particular strategy to shift the usage by offering the facility of extended hours so that customers can alter the demand pattern. But if they find themselves getting into a choke kind of a situation all over again, they have to do something again to manage the demand pattern. Maybe they have to offer certain incentives or extend their supply side, and so on and so forth. The other tool that we have available to us is communication by customers. Customers can also be very effective in spreading the word around, the word of mouth, in terms of the extension of hours or the most appropriate timing in relation to a particular service can be talked about by a satisfied customer. A satisfied customer will always tell his associates, the friends and relatives, which exactly is the most appropriate time to visit a particular facility. And that also brings about sanity in to the schedules of sellers who are in a position to manage demand in a more efficient way. Now, having learned the supply side strategies and the demand side strategies and the tools available to us, we should be in a position to cope with the fluctuating demand. How do we do that? Well, we do that by way of employing strategies from both sides. And let me give you a summary of what we have learned so far, which is going to make it clearer to us in terms of the coping with the fluctuations. Well, we have learned the supply side strategies, and let me tell you that the strategies of the part-timers and using regulars, working overtime, cross-training, and the outsourcing are some of the strategies which have become quite very popular among many service industries all over the world. And depending upon the nature of the service and the organization and the given demand supply situation, we have to pick one of these that is the most conducive and encouraging for our business. We have seen that part-timers are really beneficial when we are dealing with a situation of an upsurge in a cost-efficient kind of a setup, because part-timers generally there should be those people who are kind of low-skilled people and not highly skilled people. When we are dealing with highly skilled people, it means that we are basically dealing with regulars, or let's put it this way, that we should deal with regulars who are working overtime, because it is a question of high skills, which automatically takes us to the areas of customization and functional quality. And therefore, when it comes to the position of cost efficiency, we should be considering the part-timers strategy, and if the case is otherwise, we should be more inclined toward the strategy of having regulars to work overtime, because we do understand the advantages associated with that. In case of a need for high-level skills, we need to have generally highly qualified professionals for the kinds of services. We need to have people already having a lot of knowledge about those services, and therefore the strategy of using regular staff members working overtime is better when we are dealing with those kind of services. And you know very well that those services fall under the areas of customization and functional quality. However, outsourcing is the one strategy which may work both ways, meaning it may work for cost-efficient position, and it may also work for customization and functional quality. The reason is that outsourcing in a case of catering and the janitorial services, which are basically all about cleaning services and all that, we already have seen that the low-skilled staff is needed, and therefore there's no harm in outsourcing that kind of service to somebody else, because it is not one of the core products or services that any business is dealing with. At the same time, outsourcing may also take place if we are dealing with customization and the functional quality in relation to consultancies, for example. Contrary to what I said earlier, which was in relation to the part-timers versus the regulars, when we outsource a highly skilled kind of a job, we have to see to it that we outsource that to a company or a bunch of professionals who really are fully conversant with the kind of job that is being outsourced. Let us take the example of the HR. There are so many companies that outsource to freelance, highly qualified consultants the job of the training and development. So in other words, if there's an HR company that specializes in conducting training and development programs for different corporate entities, they do get into outsourcing if they think they are short of staff. If the situation is that of demand exceeding their capacity, they have to contact those professionals who are available on the market and willing to offer their services. So in that situation, outsourcing becomes beneficial in the positions of customization and the functional quality, because we are dealing with qualified professionals. Another thing that we have to keep in mind in relation to coping with fluctuations is that it has to be a combination of strategies from the supply side and demand side. In very simple words, what I'm saying is, in certain situations we have to expand supply, and in certain situations we have to curtail demand at peak time. We have to expand it because we want to absorb more demand, and we curtail it because we want to shift the usage to a lean period. These are the situations which could be the best possible ones for the companies, but unfortunately this always is not the situation. And what most of the companies do, first try to maximize the usage of the available capacity, and once they have reached the maximum point, they curtail their demand there and then start shifting the usage to lean periods. Let me try to explain that with the help of a graphical presentation which will make the whole thing absolutely clear to all of us. As you can see from this the presentation, we have two different bars, the one representing high period and the other one representing low period. In the sense we are trying to understand the fluctuation in demand patterns because of which we have to manage supply and demand. We have to take these two scenarios into consideration, meaning the scenario of high period, which is scenario A, and the scenario of low period, which is scenario B. Let's stick to high period first. As you can see, there are different portions comprising the complete bar. The first portion ends at 70% of the capacity. So the foremost objective of any business has got to be to utilize this capacity. If the company is not in a position to utilize this capacity, the company is either into a loss situation or it is just about around the break-even point. So the very first objective of any company has to be to hit the optimal capacity, which I told you by rule of thumb is between 70 and 90%. And that is the portion of the bar which is represented by dark green, and that is the area of optimal capacity. And this is the objective which any company must achieve after hitting the point of 70%. As long as the company is within this area, it is in a position to offer a service of high quality because there is no stress on the resources the company has employed. However, the moment it goes beyond 90% and is within the area of 90 and 100%, it is operating at the maximum capacity. Now, this is not to say that it is in a dangerous area. No, all it means is the company has got to start thinking about shifting the demand which will exceed the 100% level also, because you go beyond 90% when demand consistently increases your optimal capacity, and the point will come when it will exceed 100%. And the area which is represented by excessive demand is the one which shows these vertical red bars. Now, this is the demand which cannot be fulfilled. And this is the one which has to be either shifted to a lean period or it has to be just declined and turned away. Now, in case you turn your customers away, you are still operating at 100%, making good profits, selling maybe at the differential pricing and reaping all the benefits of differential pricing. But then, if you really can shift the usage to a lean period, you are in a position which is even better. And that is represented by the scenario B, which is the low period. And you can see this demand being shifted there. It also elevates the capacity utilization from 30% to 70%, which is the optimal capacity of the company. Now, with this hypothetical example, the concept of working with a combination of strategies from both sides, meaning the supply side and the demand side, should be very clear in our minds. And that takes us to another interesting topic of yield management. Yield management consists of the four different elements, and they've got to be understood very accurately in order to appreciate the essence of the concept. And those are capacity utilization, the right pricing, and the market segmentation, and financial returns. I'll be talking about all these one by one because they are very closely intertwined in the context of this particular concept. Basically, yield management is a tool to manage differential pricing, which we already have learned. And the concept works by way of using a methodology which is based on using past purchase behavior of the different segments of our customers that we have been dealing with in order to maximize our financial returns. I would again say very interesting because we charge different customers or different segments a different price when they come to buy the service at different time frames. And that is what really gives us a mix of pricing with the help of which we maximize our revenues. The tool works with the help of the very sophisticated computer models, which I would again say use historical data along with the very sophisticated mathematical algorithms in order to come up with a mix of pricing that I've been talking about. And that is a very special kind of a software, and people who are trained to use that software that enable us to fully use the concept. Basically, it is destined to maximize our financial returns. That's something I would rub in again and again. And we maximize our returns by bringing about a balance among capacity utilization, the market segments, and the prices charged. Now, this is a statement which we have to keep in mind. A balance among capacity utilization, market segments, and the prices charged, so that we can maximize our revenues. Well, originally the concept was started by airlines, and still today it is the airlines that are the most extensive users of this concept. And for this concept to succeed, there are certain conditions which we have to fulfill. In the first place, we've got to be dealing with segments of customers who come and buy the service at different timings. And number two is we have to have more than one segment. If we can fulfill these two conditions for any service, we really can apply this concept of yield management. But I will again say that it is the airlines that happen to be the most extensive users. Hotels and business centers also have started using this particular concept, because with the help of this, they really can maximize their revenues. How they maximize? Let me give you one example. If an airliner with 200 seats has to be filled, and the price of one seat is Pak rupees 5,000, the total revenue generated by selling those 200 seats is rupees 1 million. Because of the fact that airlines deal with different segments, and those segments come to buy that service at different timings, they have the opportunity of making use of this concept by creating the kind of balance I was talking about, meaning the capacity utilization, the pricing charged, and the segments. Those who come early pay less, and those who come later pay more. So in other words, this is a concept which works in total opposition to the one that we have for tangible goods. For tangible goods, upon arrival of a new design or a model of an existing product, the demand for the existing product recedes. And keeping that recession in view as a fact of life, sellers cut the price of the existing product and keep selling the existing product at reduced prices until the time it fully runs out, making complete room for the new product to take hold and start selling at a higher price. But the concept of yield management, like I said, works differently, in complete opposition to the example that I've quoted. By the essence of yield management, you start selling at the lowest price. And as and when you fulfill capacity, you keep increasing the pricing. You do that with the help of the computer models that I was talking about. And it is those models which tell us up to which capacity we have to sell at a certain price, which changes after utilization of a certain level of capacity, and hence charge different prices to different customers who buy the service at different times. To make it absolutely clear, let us talk about an example with the help of an illustration which I really would like to show you. As you can see from here, we are talking about an airliner with 200 seats. And we have divided those 200 seats hypothetically into 4 different segments of the market. As you can see right on top is 90 seats, which constitute something like 45% of the total capacity selling at the average price or the base price of 5,000, which I told you as an example when I started talking about the concept, bringing us a revenue of 450,000. After we have sold this 45% capacity, we sell the next 60 seats at a raised price of 6,000, bringing us 360,000 rupees. Yet moving on to the next level of 30 seats, selling at a price of 7,000, which is even higher, posting a revenue of 210,000, and yet going for the remaining 20 seats, selling at the best possible price of 10,000 rupees, fetching a total revenue of 200,000 for these 20 seats, and thereby posting a total of 1.22 million rupees as against the 1 million which I talked about at the start of the example. And we know that the revenue generated by using the yield management pricing model is 22% higher than the traditional way of working out pricing and revenue, which would have been, like I said, Pak rupees, the 1 million. The example that I've just given is that of the full capacity utilization. This may not be the case every time. What's going to happen if the capacity utilization is not the 100%? This is a question which should be flashing into your minds. What if we are not in a position to sell all 200 seats and we are in a period which is marked by low period or a valley, so to say? We are away from the peak. Even in that kind of a situation, the yield management concept can fetch us more revenue than would have been the case otherwise. Because of the fact that we are passing through a lean period, which happens to be kind of a cyclical fact, it is not advisable to slash the price by a certain percentage in order to stimulate demand during that lean period. The yield management concept suggests that even during that period, we try to maintain a balance between those factors that I was talking about, meaning capacity utilization, the pricing charged, and the market segments to whom that pricing is charged. Again, in terms of the people buying tickets at different point in times. And that is the beauty of the application of this particular concept, because we're dealing with more than one segment and segments which are buying the service at different points in time. If these two conditions are fulfilled, we really are in a position to make full benefit of this particular concept. So coming back to the example of a capacity utilization which is not optimal, we still have a chance to make the more money or to generate the more revenue. Like I said, instead of just slashing the price by a certain standard or a standardized kind of the percentage, say 20%, we make that 20%, or we may make that 20% as the base price, and then see the kind of balance that we can create depending upon the historical data and the purchasing behavior which the model is using, and then come up with the pricing patterns, meaning a mix of pricing in relation to that particular lean period. The chances are that we still will generate more revenue. So, in other words, what I'm saying is that instead of slashing the price and making a standardized kind of a baseline for the total capacity that we have to sell or we want sold, we should make that baseline just a base for a mix of pricing which is going to be higher for different segments that will come later and later to buy that particular service, meaning those seats that we have available to sell. So the beauty of yield management concept is that it works in any given situation. As a matter of fact, it may not be a bad idea for you to come up with the kind of the different hypothetical situations by using numbers like the ones I showed you in relation to different capacity levels, and then see the difference between the total revenue that you generate with the help of just the one baseline and with the help of different levels of pricing. And it goes without saying that the latter is going to be more beneficial than the former. So in yet another words, we can say that the concept of yield management is a process whereby we allocate just about the right capacity to the right segments at the right price. and therefore it is a measure of the extent to which a company can utilize its capacity toward exploiting its revenue generating potential. With that, our understanding about the managing supply and demand should be complete now. And let me give you a very brief summary of the concept that I've been talking about over the last 2 lectures. We have to balance supply and demand because of fluctuations in demand patterns. And what we have learned is that demand patterns are not consistent because of the inconsistencies or because of the peaks and valleys in the demand patterns. We have to either stretch our capacity or curtail our demand. And given the situation, we bring into use the different kinds of strategies that we have learned in order to deal with these 2 possible situations. And with this, our understanding of the 2 major concepts of distribution and balancing supply and demand is now complete. And in the next lecture, I would be dealing with gap 4. And that's what I promised you. Thanks very much for the attendance, and I look forward to talking with you again in the next lecture. Allah Hafiz until then.